I think our apartment was less than 600 or 700 square feet. It was really tiny. We rented such a small apartment for the majority of my childhood. Growing up with a single mother, it was just my mother and my sister. I wasn't really able to have friends for sleepovers or birthday parties because we just didn't have the space.
After more than 20 years of renting, what did it feel like to have a home she could truly call her own finally? Hi everyone, I'm Natalie. Welcome to Not Just a Home Thing from Two Pages. Today we're talking about the decision that comes with buying a first home. Hi Grace.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, so let's do it.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, for the first question, you rented for more than 20 years. When you finally bought your first house, did it immediately feel like home, or did you realize that maybe the ownership and belonging are two different things?
It definitely did not immediately feel like home. The home that we bought in particular was quite a fixer-upper and really needed a lot of work when we first bought it. It really felt like someone else's house that we were slowly trying to make ours for at least the first 6 months. So it definitely took a bit of time for it to really feel like ours.
So you designed by yourself?
Yes.
Oh, wow. So which room is your favorite one?
My favorite is probably our library/den area. It's probably the room I get the most comments on as well. We created a whole built-in library and sort of worked off of the gorgeous stone fireplace that was already there to create a room really inspired by like traditional English and Scottish design styles. There's plaid wallpaper and wood paneling, and it's easily my favorite place in the whole house.
Growing up with a home your family owned, did you ever feel different from other children?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, we rented such a small apartment for the majority of my childhood. Growing up with a single mother, it was just my mother and my sister. I think our apartment was less than like 600 or 700 square feet. It was really tiny. So I couldn't do a lot of the things that other kids could. I wasn't really able to have friends over for sleepovers or birthday parties because we just didn't have the space. And so it wasn't really a home that we felt like we could welcome people into and invite people into that space because there just wasn't enough room. So I definitely feel like there was some things that, I couldn't do that a lot of the other kids that I was friends with could.
So how you deal with this kind of feeling?
I think it's one of the things that really inspired me to get into design. And even though I continued to rent as an adult throughout college and into, adulthood, I think it's what really then kind of inspired me to start making spaces feel like my own, and creating a space that I could invite people into and we could host people at. And I think that is, ultimately what then led to me going into design as a full-time career.
Yeah, I was international student. I just graduated last May. I graduated from USC. So I live in downtown LA. It's my first time to rent apartment by myself. The first year, I feel, oh my God, I just rent it. Maybe do not put a lot of effort to decorate. But for now, it's 4 years. Now this apartment, although it's only 1 year lease, but I decorate everywhere is my style.
Exactly. I know that all too well.
Yeah, so as an amazing designer, any suggestion, any small step make the space feel more like you?
One of the easiest ways is art on the walls. I think everyone's taste in art is so unique. And I think that's one of the clearest reflections of you and your design style. And it doesn't have to be even art per se. It can be family photographs. Or photographs of places you've traveled and loved. I think just putting some things up on the walls that reflect you. I've seen people even frame records and hang records on the walls because they really love old records. So things like that, I think, are one of the easiest ways to incorporate your own style and just make a space feel more like yours, rather than something you're just kind of like borrowing.
Yeah. I agree. I did it. My wall have some paintings. I really like
I
it.
love it. Yeah.
Make the whole space more art and more.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That's great.
What did your mother do? Maybe it's small, but made a rented apartment feel safe, personal, or special.
I think one of the challenges with a lot of apartments and spaces that you're renting are you can't really change a lot, usually. Sometimes you can paint, a lot of times you can't. You usually can't change the floors or the layouts. And so you sort of have to work within these very tight confines. And I've even had some clients that are renters and can't put any holes in the walls. And so even then, hanging things on the walls can sometimes be a challenge too. And so there wasn't much we could do to it. But I do remember her, every kind of shelf we had, or just sort of flat surface, the top of a dresser, our TV console, bookshelves, were always just filled with sayings that she loved, that she cut out of a magazine, a recipe she saw somewhere, a birthday card from someone. They were just filled with all of these like little mementos that were a reflection of our life. It was cluttered like in the best way possible. And so I still have memories of just, these bookshelves and media shelves just filled with all these little things that she had collected. That was our life.
Oh, that's sweet.
Yeah, it was.
What did the apartment you grew up in teach you about home that maybe no design school ever could?
I think it's that a home is really what you make it. And it's your space. And I think for a lot of people, it is their safe space. And, regardless of if you rent, you own, you do a lot of design, you do nothing, it's really what you make it.
I agree.
Yeah.
So many stories happen in my space. A lot of story, a lot of friends come here and we eat, we talk. Maybe sometimes I cry, I laugh.
Yep,
I'm
exactly.
excited, I feel so sad, so stressful. A lot of things happen. Make the space special, make the space feel like home.
I so agree. Yeah, I love that.
So was there one specific moment when your first house finally began to feel like yours?
I think back to really the first year we were in our home. We did a lot of work, and then we got to a point where we felt like we'd done enough that we could have an actual like housewarming party. We had a huge party with all of our friends and family for housewarming. And it was so beautiful to see just so many of our people all in the same place at once. And it was just such a kind of welcoming moment and feeling for this was our house. This is something that we could now do with it, for me in particular, because that wasn't something I got to really do growing up. So to have that kind of full circle moment of now this is something that we have the space to do and can do, and we still do very frequently, having friends and family over, and I love hosting. And so I think, getting to start doing that was really a moment where this place felt like ours.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
Yeah, it was really fun.
Yeah, I do like invite friends to my home. I gonna cook for them and maybe drink some wine together, like talk.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
So
it was really awesome.
why do so many first-time homeowners feel pressure to finish and furnish the entire house immediately?
I think there's an element of like wanting to feel settled. I don't think, anyone likes to sort of feel like they're in that like in between kind of chaotic stage where like you're sort of living in boxes and with temporary stuff and the layout doesn't work. And I think that can feel chaotic and stressful. So I totally get that. And I think there's also just, a sense of pride that comes with whether you are renting your space or you own it. Whenever you have friends and family over, I think there's a sense of pride and that being your space, how you've put it together, how it reflects you. And I think all of that's very natural and very understandable. I felt a lot of those same things too when we first bought our house. And that said, though, it can be a lot to try to tackle everything at once. It's a lot of decisions. Time and money are typically very finite for a lot of clients that I work with. And so I often have it be the case where we'll start with a few rooms or priorities or spaces that are really the priority. And then we'll sort of gradually add on another space, as they get some of those first ones done. Because it's really hard to try to tackle everything at once.
Yes. So what should a family prioritize during the first 6 months in a new home?
First and foremost, you need to learn how you live in that space. A lot of homes, sometimes, especially if it's a colonial style home, have two different kind of living rooms. How are you going to use those? And does anyone in your family work from home? Do you need to have a space that's dedicated as an office? How do the bathrooms need to function? How many bedrooms need to function as a bedroom? Is anyone sharing a bedroom? Do you need a guest space? Are you eating dinner around the dining table every night, or are you eating in the kitchen somewhere? And so I think just seeing how you live in the space and how it needs to function for you is, I think, one of the most important things to just focus on in those first few months. I know it's hard to wait to do everything that you want to do. And I think a lot of people go into a home and they have all this inspiration of what this space could be. And a lot of times they're right in that, but I think it's so important to just see how you live in a space first. And then, I would prioritize the spaces that make function of your daily life easier. So let's say you love eating dinner around the dining room table with your family every night, and right now the dining room is just not set up in a way you can do that. And it's so frustrating every night to have to eat dinner over here. And so then I would think about the things that are really going to improve the function of your day-to-day life. And if you are big entertainers, if the space isn't really set up for entertaining, then I think that's also a priority.
Yeah, great. Yeah. So which design decision should homeowner make right away? And which one should they wait to make until they have lived in the space, like you just shared?
Once you kind of understand how you live in a space or want to live in a space, I think things like figuring out layout is really important. That's usually where I start with a lot of my clients, is once we kind of know how a space needs to function, what's the layout? And are we changing things within that layout from how they are currently? Some of the other things that I think are just easiest to do either before you move in or really early on after moving in, things like painting and flooring. It's just harder to do those later. I do have a lot of people that hold off on doing them until later, but if it's something we can kind of hone in on early, just there's so much dust involved with refinishing floors or ripping up of carpets, things like painting. You've got to take everything off the walls, push everything into the middle of the room. And so that's one of the challenges I work through with a lot of clients, is because we kind of have to envision the bigger picture before we've gotten there yet in order to select paint colors and create kind of a cohesive color palette early on if we want to do those things first, which they are usually easier to do in the beginning.
Wow, that's really helpful suggestion.
Yeah.
What's the most expensive mistake you see first-time homeowner make? And what do people most often regret buying?
Sofas and sectionals. Impulsively buying sofas and sectionals. So I have this happen a lot where someone has just moved into a space. Maybe it's a lot bigger than their previous space, and they say, I want a bigger couch, or this couch we had looks so small in here, or I want a really big sectional, or just impulsively purchasing sofas and sectionals or just really large upholstery. I see that as the thing people most often regret, because they're really hard to get rid of if you change your mind. It's hard to move them, it's hard to sell them. But oftentimes, because it's such an expensive piece of furniture, we sometimes end up having to work around them and kind of incorporate them into the design and make it work with the design rather than taking our time with making a decision like that and purchasing the right piece for the design, because then it can really become a foundational element of the design rather than something we have to kind of make work. And not that we can't make it work, because I sometimes will have people say, I hate the color of this couch, but it's so comfortable, or it was passed down from my parents. I really love it. If there's any way we can work with it, let me know. And that's totally fine. But if you're asking sort of what people oftentimes have regrets over, it's like, I wish I wouldn't have pulled the trigger on that sectional a month into living in this house.
What is worth investing from the beginning in Europe?
I mean, honestly, and I don't say this just because I'm a designer, but like a plan or a design. I think it's really worth investing in a cohesive design plan from the beginning, so that way you know what the vision is and you know what your plan is. So then when you do see that sectional go on sale for Black Friday, or you do see, that really nice console at an antique mall, then like these are, when you find the right piece or you catch a sale, then you can pull the trigger on something and it's going to work with the bigger picture because you have that plan. And so I think that's a really important thing to just invest in from the beginning. And sometimes people will refer to it as like slow decorating, like you get the plan, but then you take your time putting it together. And I know that's really hard to have that patience. And it's okay, I think, for some of your furnishings to go through a few iterations. Maybe it's a piece for now, and then you find something down the line you like better and you swap it out. But I think that's really important. And then when you are ready to go for those larger upholstery pieces, sofas, sectionals, that's something that I think it's really worth investing in. Good quality, a good sofa or sectional that's going to last you. I think that investment is always worth it when you're ready.
How do you help clients discover what they really love, but not simply what Pinterest or Instagram tell them what they should love?
Pinterest is such an amazing tool, but it can also be so overwhelming. And I will sometimes, look at a client's inspiration and it's a mixture of a lot of different styles. And so one of the things I really do right out of the gate is I ask them to tell me what it is they like about the pictures that they've saved. And I think it helps them as well sort of understand their own style a little bit better. I'll have people say, I picked this because I really like the light fixture, or I picked this because I really like the green of that sofa. And so I think that's very helpful for all of us to hone in on their style, to have them tell me what it is they like about each thing that they've kind of saved. But something else that I also do is I ask them to send me pictures of interiors that they don't like. And I ask them to explain to me what it is and why they don't like that image. And I think that has been very helpful as well, to just kind of hone in on their style, which is a huge part of the process.
Yes, really helpful suggestion.
Yeah.
How do you design a beautiful home that can still handle children, pets, everyday messy, something happen in life?
Yeah, absolutely. Because beautiful homes are nothing if they aren't functional for day-to-day lives, families, kids, pets. I ask people, kind of, do you entertain a lot? Like, is that flow important? Kids, pets, I think it's important to just determine like the priorities of the flow and the function early on, right out of the gate. I think probably the best tip I have, particularly when it comes to like busy family life, kids, pets, stuff like that, is thoughtful and intentional storage. There's something in design called the 80-20 rule, which is like you should only see 20% of the things in the room. You should be able to put 80% of it away. And I think being able to put away the visual clutter of daily life and put it away easily. So it shouldn't be difficult to pack everything away, but just knowing that everything has a place at the end of the day, at the end of the week, just easy storage. It's probably the number one thing I'm thinking about when I have a client that has kids or pets or both, is how much storage can we incorporate? Because I think that is really what then makes things more functional. It opens up flow for us a lot of time as well. Aside from that, I think, things like performance fabrics, things that can really hold up to life, and pet-friendly fabrics. I think about round edges on coffee tables versus square. And so things, that are going to be at height of small kids, having softer corners and edges versus, square edges. And so stuff like that, high traffic versus low traffic fabrics on rugs. And so you really do have to think about those things to make a space functional for, the daily life.
Yes, oh my God, I agree. The storage is really important. I buy a lot of things, but my space just 1B, so the storage is really helpful.
Yeah,
I buy them, but I do not want see them messy in my home every day. So just
yeah. I totally, I'm the same way. I need to be able to put things away at the end of the day.
When one person, maybe usually mom, they carries most of the invisible work of running a household, how can software design make that person's life easier?
I think it's a very similar idea. I think the same thought kind of applies here too, just really thoughtful storage and making sure everything has a place. I think that visual clutter can really lead to mental clutter, which starts to feel really overstimulating at times. And so I think when you're able to wipe the slate clean at the end of the day, I think that really helps a lot. And so, just thinking in my own life, I have found there's one kind of corner in the kitchen where I was always looking for somewhere to put, these little kind of countertop appliances that we have. They were always out on the counter. I had nowhere to put them, but I needed to be able to access them right here when I was in the kitchen in this spot. And so we incorporated a little cabinet there in the corner, somewhere I could put them away, but I had easy access to them. And so I think design components like that, where if you're like, I just need a basket here, or I just need a cabinet here, to be able to just have everything have a place. I think that is really helpful and just sort of cutting down on the visual clutter, which I think helps with mental clutter as well.
That's what happens when a couple has completely different design tastes. And how do you create a home that feels shared rather than compromised?
Such a good question. And I have this happen a lot more than I think people might realize. I've had a few really tricky combinations. I would say though the most common combination that I get, and it's actually one of the easiest, is when one person likes more traditional styles and one person likes more modern styles. And they sound like polar opposites, but in order to accomplish a traditional sort of antique style really well, you have to work in some modern elements as well. Otherwise, your home starts to feel a little bit like a museum. And so something, like an antique sideboard with a newer sofa, or a vintage light fixture with newer curtains. So I think balancing those styles, it can be challenged, but that's really the key, I think, in creating a collected design that feels organic and it feels authentic when you do incorporate a couple of different styles. The trick is balance. It's all about balance.
Yeah, of course, balance is important, but sometimes people just have different opinion, have different tastes. They negotiate with each other. So as designer, how you help them to find the balance?
The name of the game is really compromise there. Sometimes, one person's going to compromise on one thing as long as they get their wish on something else. And so I'll have conversations, with clients about what's important to each of them. I usually find there's one or two particular elements that someone really has their heart set on. And as long as we're incorporating that, everyone's usually happy, but we'll sort of talk through sort of what it is they really like about something. So for example, let's say a large velvet sofa just doesn't really work with the design and it's not super practical for their life, but one person really has their heart set on that. So we'll talk about, what is it that is really drawing you to that? Is it the velvet? Is it the color? Let's say it's the velvet. So I'll suggest, okay, could we maybe incorporate velvet curtains? Could we do an accent chair that's velvet? Does that kind of, scratch that itch to where you feel like that's being brought into the design, but maybe in a way that's a little bit more functional? And so we'll see sort of how we can, make some adjustments. At the end of the day, I take these decisions very seriously, and this is a space that these people are going to live in. It is their safe space, and so I want it to reflect them, and they are spending their hard-earned money on these decisions. And so I really want to make sure it's done right, but I want to make sure that they feel really satisfied and happy with it at the end of the day.
Yeah, of course, but it's possible to make everybody happy.
It's not always possible to make everyone happy. I often find a lot of times it's the case with clients that it can sometimes be hard to envision it. I think once they see it, then a lot of times they're like, oh, yeah, actually, I think that's great. It's just sometimes kind of hard to understand or envision it until you see it. And so I think being able to see and visualize design concepts helps as well. And everyone sort of saying like, oh, yeah, no, that does work.
So I feel like maybe the first step, the foundation is make your client trust you. They can give you more space, more time to create, to design for them.
Yeah, client trust is essential in this business.
Yeah, any tips, like make the client trust you?
I think, showing off your work, showcasing your work. I think your work having kind of a specific style then tends to be what your clients come to you for. That's not to say that every client I've ever had shares the same style that I love and that a lot of my projects tend to favor. But I think, when you do have that sort of known flavor, I'll call it, then they're coming to you for that reason. So I think there's already a little bit of trust built up when they've seen, your work and it really resonates with them. Then I think they've already got that confidence that you're going to be able to develop a style that they're really going to love.
Yeah, and you know what? I really like your website style.
Yeah, thank you. That's kind of the style that, we've come to be known for, sort of that warmer, cozy, kind of collected in, lived in sort of feel.
What's the name of the blue? The blue is so comfortable, a fashion, classic.
Yeah, that blue is actually, it's a Benjamin Moore color called Brewster Gray, which is so funny that it's technically a gray because in most lighting, it looks blue.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it's your favorite color?
It's definitely up there. I would say the blue family of colors tends to be some of my favorites, but we sampled quite a few colors for that because lighting really does make such a difference. And I tell clients this all the time. A color can look really great to me in the store. Until we sample it on your wall, though, and see it in your light, we're not going to know if it works.
So for ending question, what does home mean to you now?
I would say it's our safe space. I mean, we love to travel, we love to do things, but it's always now this place that we can always come back to. It's our home base, it's our safe space.
How you build this safe feeling?
I think the more it has reflected us, the more we've kind of done to it and really customized it. Changed the paint colors, changed the floor, we've added features, we've restored some features. The more we just live in it and feel like we are using these spaces, the more we entertain here and host here, the more it really starts to feel like ours and like this is our safe place.
Oh, that's warm. Could you complete this sentence? A house becomes a home when...
I would say when it reflects the people who live there.
Oh, I love that answer. Thank you so much, Grace.
You're welcome. This was so fun.
If you like this conversation, please follow Not Just a Home Thing on Spotify and YouTube and share it with someone who's learning to make a house feel like home. Talk to you soon. Bye.